And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Atoll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we have, as usual, another pile of interesting and very diverse stories to talk about from across the micromobility landscape. This week, we're covering everything from new laws in New York City that are going to limit the speed of e-bikes to Trek getting a new throttle-enabled e-bike. Big deal for Trek as they've never done this before. We've got some motorcycle stories, everything from if you guys remember the SONDORS Metacycle, well, the company is back from bankruptcy with a new electric motorcycle, though it's raising some eyebrows. We've got an interesting, supposedly Honda electric motorcycle that is not quite a Honda motorcycle, so more on that, and several other stories. But where are we going to start with this week, Seth?
All right. Today's starts at this kind of interesting, but I was initially thinking of Specialized, but Trek breaks new ground with its first throttle-equipped electric bike. I know Specialized created a sub-brand that had a throttle bike.
Yeah, so Trek, I mean, they've got several sort of sister brands. Electra a couple of years ago went with a throttle finally, but this is the first time that Trek itself, under the Trek badge, is finally giving us a throttle-enabled e-bike. So this is obviously for their North American market where throttles are allowed, and this is the FX Plus One. It's kind of a hybrid style e-bike, so it's mostly designed for on-road riding, but it's got thicker, I think they're 2-inch tires, so it can handle some off-roading, and it's really designed to sort of live with one wheel in both worlds. If anything, to me, this is one of my favorite styles of bikes because not everyone is like you or me, Seth, and has different e-bikes for different moods and different types of riding. A lot of people, they have their e-bike, and so if you have
Yep.
one that can do lots of different types of riding, then that's the best for most people. So in this case, Trek has really kind of nailed the do almost anything type of bike. And it's got pretty decent specs. It's not crazy powerful. We have a 500-watt motor. Trek has never been known for, doing crazy power. You got to go to some other more like American style, e-bikes for those, heavy 750-watt motors. But 500 is certainly acceptable for most people. This is a class 3 e-bike, though, or at least class 3 capable. So owners can flip it back and forth between class 2 mode, which will limit it to 20 miles per hour, or class 3 mode, which will allow it to go all the way up to 28 miles per hour or 45 kilometers per hour. But in class 3 mode, as most people would expect, you do not have access to that throttle. So if you want to use the first throttle ever built onto a Trek e-bike, you got to keep it in class 2 mode. And even there, 20 miles per hour is definitely going to be enough for most people. The battery is, of course, UL certified. Trek is not going to be making e-bikes that don't come with those kinds of safety features. We've got nice dual piston hydraulic disc brakes, built-in LED lighting. There are mounts for racks and fenders. I do not think it comes with them standard. We got to build in a little bit of extra meat there for Trek to make some money off of accessories, I guess. But for people who want to use this as an everyday commuter, they do make it easy to mount on those commuter type accessories. But really, the take home message here, at least in my opinion, is that Trek has finally woken up and said, all right, we hear you. Americans want throttles, or I should say North Americans, because Canadians, enjoy their throttles as well. In fact, maybe that's why they went with the 500-watt motor, so it's still legal in Canada, where I believe 500 is the legal limit. So, I think that for Trek, I mean, they must have just been watching years and years of people saying, yeah, I would have liked it, but I want a throttle. And since Trek has long been more of a traditional, bike store, bike brand, and has eschewed the throttles, now they finally said, all right, we want to, do what Electra did. We see how when they brought in that moped style bike, it probably sold like hotcakes compared to their former throttleless e-bikes. And so Trek has gotten on the throttle bandwagon. I mean, come on, Seth, it was about time, right? Like, it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, I mean, in the U.S. market, like I think that's the first thing people ask is, where is the throttle? Is it a twist throttle? Is it a thumb throttle? Like, it's kind of has to have a throttle, or I shouldn't say has to, because there's plenty of people who are just fine with pedal assist, but for the, you're talking about, like, I would say 80% of the market wants a throttle. So you're just
Yeah.
automatically cutting that piece out. And, Trek obviously typically partners with not Broza, but Bosch. And Bosch doesn't really have a throttle. They're very Eurocentric. But I wonder how long Bosch can kind of hold out with throttleless bikes. It seems like.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, they're so like Eurocentric that I
Right.
think they've got a long while before, if ever, they were to say, all right, let's offer a throttle version of our motor. I think if anything, they see that as like a great differentiator between them and like the cheaper Chinese mid drives, is
Hmm.
that they're like on this other level of, like we're the fancy European one. We don't have throttles. It's a feature kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I see that, but using that same 80% of the market logic in the U.S. wants a throttle. Bosch knows that they're coming in, and their customers like Trek are going to start getting throttles, and like all of a sudden you've lost 80% of Trek's market share theoretically, or
Right.
so I just wonder how long they can hold out. You might be right, like that just might be their thing, and they're happy with that. But even like Bafang Ultra, like that's got a throttle. It's a mid drive. It's possible to do, and I think Bafang does it pretty well. But um, it'll be interesting to see how long they can hold out. This is also a
Yeah.
rear hub motor on the specific one. Obviously, you know that's a little bit of a downgrade compared to most of Trek's bikes. Um, I haven't played with it yet. I don't think you have either, but we'll have to see like what the experience is like. Is it Trek level, or is it did they just take a kind of off the shelf experience and throw it on a Trek bike?
I mean, that's the thing. Like, it almost looks like it could be a Ride One Up or one of these other, like US style brands. Obviously, this all comes from China, or now from, like Vietnam and Thailand and Cambodia. But, these are all Asian made bikes, but the sort of American based companies like Electrek, Ride One Up, formerly Juiced, those kinds of companies, a lot of their bikes look like this. And you're right, this almost feels like a Trek light kind of thing, right? That it's not what we typically think of when it comes to Trek. And maybe that's where they were comfortable saying, like, all right, if we're gonna like, dirty ourselves by going down to a throttle level, then we'll start it on our like, lower entry level model and see how that does. And maybe it makes good marketing sense because the kind of people who are interested in the throttle are probably not the people that are interested in a $4,000 Trek. Like, if you want a $4,000 Trek, you've probably got, some good quads and you're used to cycling without a throttle, right? Like,
Right.
I can see it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
makes sense.
yeah, and I think Trek appeals to more pure bikers, so maybe the throttle thing is more off-putting. I almost think of like there being a continuum of like acoustic bikes that we've had for a century. Then the pedal assist is kind of like the first step into electric hood or whatever. The training wheels, perhaps, of going electric, and then the throttle is like you're all in, and you're not even pedaling. Like it's a different kind of animal. So maybe this is Trek's like foray into that. But I have to also wonder, like, maybe this is not a good branding thing. Like maybe Trek should have just stayed in its lane, so to speak. And they have what sub brands, right? Like I know they sell. What is it? What's the
Yeah,
sub
so they're
brand?
more like sister brands, I would say, because they're not under Trek. They're under like
Uh,
Trek's owner, but Electra is, I think, their
Electra,
main
right?
like other brand. Yeah.
So I'm surprised that this is not an Electra bike. It's interesting to note.
Yeah. Well, and I
And I
think that actually it signals something, right? It signals the Trek is saying like we're open to this. It's not like, we're so opposed to throttles that we, shunt them off onto our other brands. Like, we're willing to put a throttle on a Trek branded bike. That sends a message.
Yeah. Oh, and a fun fact, in the early 2000s, Trek had a electric bike called the Electrek, and I just want to thank Trek for abandoning that trademark and um, not coming after us and suing us for anything. So shout out.
That's great.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. It's official. New York City will impose a new 15 mile per hour speed limit on electric bikes. I just want to point out that I hate this idea.
Yeah, I feel like almost every episode now there's been some like weird or awful micromobility related news from New York City. Like these are such helpful vehicles and they're being just like crushed by politicians. So anyways, let's start from the beginning here. So Mayor Adams just announced this week a new citywide speed limit for e-bikes. In fact, I think it covers all bicycles, not just e-bikes, but basically limiting to 15 miles per hour, 25 kilometers per hour. That's basically the European limit, but applied in New York. This is ostensibly designed to address concerns that many city residents have about e-bikes riding fast either in the bike lane or on the sidewalk and potentially hitting people and injuring pedestrians. I'm sure, like anecdotally, there are a lot of stories out there of, oh yeah, some delivery guy just blew past me and almost ran me over. So I get like the concept of what they're trying to address here. The problem is that in practice, if you're talking about road dangers, e-bikes actually produce so few injuries. And if you look at fatalities, almost zero fatalities compared to the actual leading cause of pedestrian injuries and deaths, which is obviously cars and trucks, especially heavy cars, SUVs, pickup trucks, those sorts of things. And so while there is a 25 mile per hour citywide speed limit for all vehicles, cars and trucks in New York City, it just seems crazy to me that people would say, all right, it's those darned e-bikes that we need to be limiting, not the 6,000 pound, trucks that are actually running people over, and causing traffic accidents as well, but especially pedestrians and crosswalks, that sort of thing. So to me, this is just like the craziest way to attempt to solve a problem. It's like a solution looking for a problem. I just don't think that fast e-bikes are actually a menace the way some people seem to present them as. I don't know. Seth, you're closer connected to New York City than I am.
Yeah. So
Oh,
I
if we don't
agree.
lose you from the feed here.
Uh-oh.
All
Can you
right,
hear
well,
me?
let Seth come back here in a minute. But basically, I think the biggest group that this is going to penalize are the delivery riders. Because if you look at electric bikes in New York City, yes, a lot of people use them for commuting. There are a decent number of people that use them for fitness or recreation, but probably the single biggest use case for electric bicycles in New York are the delivery riders. And so I think the delivery riders that are going to most suffer from this. Already they get hassled by the police all the time, and this is just one more thing that delivery riders are going to have to worry about, is that, oh, now if I ride over 15 miles per hour when I'm bringing people their food or bringing packages or anything, now that's one more thing I can get hassled for, get a ticket for, something like that. So I think that's the biggest group that is already having such a hard time, and now we've got one more thing to pressure them. But Seth, you're a lot more connected to NYC. What do you think?
Micah, can you hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I agree with one of our commenters, Michael Sprinzelis. 15-mile limit makes us slow obstacles in a 25 mile per hour larger vehicle world. That's been my point with e-bikes from the beginning. It is safer to ride at what closer to car speed than it is to be an obstacle, and that is like one of the beautiful things about e-bikes is like you're no longer pissing off the car people, you're riding with them. And in New York City, if you're going 25 miles per hour, you're loving life. So the fact that a lot of e-bikes can go 28 miles per hour, you're typically like, I've said this 100 times, the fastest way to get from one point to another in New York City, unless you're going really far, is on an e-bike. Like you can go faster than ambulances. You can go faster than any mode of transportation. Subways obviously aren't super efficient. You got to, go downstairs and go to a certain spot and then end up at another spot and wait for the train. Um, Cars are just, a menace, obviously. There's no great way to get from one point to another, but the best way is on an e-bike. And, clipping that, like theoretically, even if they could, you know, keep that in check, the 15 mile per hour harebrained idea, uh, that nobody's going to be able to enforce. Like, even if they could keep that in check, like, you're discouraging people from using e-bikes. Like, there's already a 28 or 30 mile per hour speed limit on New York e-bikes. I think that's very reasonable. Um, just because, that's kind of the high end of where bikes can take you, and, safety wise, and frankly, speed in New York is you're not gonna need more than 30 miles per hour unless you're on the West Side Highway or the FDR or whatever. So yeah, I mean, this just is a horrible idea on every level.
Yeah, and like of course, you and I are going to be biased towards e-bikes, but I just think that despite our bias, we're on the correct side here.
Yeah.
Like it's common sense. Come on,
Yeah.
people.
I'm feeling pretty confident about that. And I think everybody, like, even like car owner, like, if you're a car driver in New York and the guy that you're trying to get around is going half the speed that he could be going, you're like, you're not happy either. Nobody's going to be happy about this horrible idea. Go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. MeetOne Tour full suspension electric trike review. The most powerful and most comfortable e-trike yet. Powerful trikes scare me.
Yeah, so this one, it is powerful, but it's also weirdly stable. This is just a weirdly good trike. I'll tell you right off the bat, the downside is that it's super heavy. I can't even figure out how heavy it is. It's not listed. It was above the 100-pound limit of my hang scale, and I don't even know how I'd hang this on my hang scale effectively. But so it's big and it's heavy, but it is so comfortable. It's powerful. It's got two motors, a 750 watt hub motor in the front and a second 750 watt motor in the rear. It's kind of a jack shaft setup, so it's right in front of the rear axle, and it powers, I think, just one of the two rear wheels, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's two-wheel drive instead of three, but it's still 1,500 watts, so it's quite powerful. It does have a torque sensor, so if you're going to use pedal assist, that power is controllable. Like, it doesn't rocket away. It accelerates quickly but smoothly, and it responds very nicely. It's also got a throttle. Weirdly, the throttle is limited to 15 miles per hour, so already ready for New York, apparently. But if you pedal, then it'll get up to 25 miles per hour, which seems way too fast for a trike. And I did not actually get up to 25 because it just feels weird being on a non-leaning vehicle, especially a three-wheeler, going that fast. I think I got up to around 20 or so and was like, this is probably fine. There's a lot of momentum here. But it's just like incredibly comfortable. You're looking at the dual rear shocks there. So together with the dual crown front suspension fork, it's got, I guess you'd call that like triple suspension, but the rear axle is like a straight axle. It's not independent rear suspension, so it's still sort of like dual suspension front and rear. But between 4-inch fat tires, dual suspension, a like captain's chair saddle. It's not even a saddle anymore. It's like really, it's almost a lazy boy. It's like so thick. So it's not like the normal trike seat where it's just got a back to it. It's like super thick foam that I would be comfortable sitting on at like a bar or something, like outside of cycling. It's just so incredibly comfortable. And then it's got a lot of nice features. It's got mirrors that are actually good quality. Like, I would have these on a motorcycle mirrors. They don't bounce. They don't like vibrate and shake around. They stick out far enough that you actually see behind you instead of just looking at your shoulders or like your forearms the whole time. It's got a big rear basket with an enclosed bag, so you can toss small things in there. You can throw your keys or wallet, and it's not going to fall out of the basket. It's got really good lighting. Basically, like, it's really hard to find anything to complain about this thing. It's expensive. It's like $3,300, if I'm not mistaken. So, like twice the price of a typical, Electrek XP trike. I think the rad trike is now down to like 1,500 or so. So, like twice that price, but you're getting a lot more than those, much more power, dual batteries. Oh, I didn't even say the dual batteries. Yeah, two batteries. So just like a lot of performance, a lot of features, a lot of just really well thought out comfort. Oh, the last thing I forgot to mention, you can see how far forward my feet are there, right? Like they're not tucked up under you. This is not a recumbent, but it almost feels like a recumbent because it's so pedal forward in its design that you just don't feel like you're, cramping up your legs. You almost feel like you're in a recumbent position. So between the huge captain's chair and the pedal forward geometry, it's just like actually fun to pedal as opposed to like a chore or a, uncomfortable pedal. So I'm just really impressed with this thing. And I didn't expect to, it's like a Chinese, sort of unheard of brand. It looked neat, so I thought I'd give it a try, but I was just not expecting to be this impressed with how well it performed. So I think that MeetOne, if I'm even saying that correctly, just knocked it out of the park with this thing. Now, the price is going to be the big, barrier to entry for most people. If you're just on a fixed budget, I know a lot of older people are getting into electric tricycles, and if you're basically on a fixed retirement budget, this is going to be expensive. But for the folks that their priority is comfort and their priority is performance as opposed to just price, I definitely think this one has a place in the market. Do you think you would convert to a trike person at some point, Seth, for something like this?
I don't know what my balance is going to be like in my elder years, so I don't want to say never, but whenever I get onto a trike, I'm always like, I just don't know how to ride one. It's like putting training wheels on a bike. It's like it's a different experience because you're upright and your turning is like very
Yeah.
two-dimensional or something. Um, it's also similar to like I don't know, like if you ever flown a plane, but like um, you use your feet to steer on the ground, and when you're up in the air, you lean to turn.
Yeah.
So it's like you go from one set of thinking to the other. Um, it's so trike isn't my cup of tea. That said, like I'm wildly curious that you had such a good experience on this because all the most of the trikes I've ridden, I've had to ride really slow, and I saw you going quite fast. So I'm curious, is it like the weight keeping the stability on this thing? Like when you're going quite fast and you make a turn, what does that feel like? What's happening?
Yeah, it was definitely quite stable. I definitely did turns at around, I think in the video I even said like, oh, I'm going 16 miles an hour right now into this turn, which is faster than I would take most trikes. And I think it's a few things working together. For one, it's definitely fairly wide in the back. I mean, between the wide axle, the fat tires, just the big chunky frame, you've got more width, and that's the first sort of variable in the stability equation. But then with the rear suspension, I'm wondering if there's some compression going on in a turn and if that's helping with the stability a bit, especially if you're compressing that suspension and you're getting that lower center of gravity. Now, it might not be much, even if you're going down 3/4 of an inch, that's going to be combined with the wider, stance in the back. And then with the type of sort of pedal forward design where the seat can be lower because your feet are out in front of you, that just puts your whole body down lower. Again, not full recumbent, but sort of almost semi recumbent in a way, which again just helps with stability. So I think a lot of those things working in concert are making it just that much more stable and makes me feel more confident going fast into a turn.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty stable, from the video. If you're not watching us, we're watching the video. Um, and it almost seems, I mean, that thing is just so burly that it seems kind of like like a motorcycle. Like it seems like one of those motorcycles you see on the road, and clearly those things are going much faster than 30 miles per hour or 25 miles per hour, the top speed of this thing. Um, so there is a way to keep some stability. Um, I'm just curious, like your take, like when you lean on this one, do you think it would be better if the two wheels were in front? Like we've seen bikes like that with the two front lean. Is that like where does the trike world end up? Like, is this the final form, or are we looking at something else?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Those tadpole trikes with the two wheels in the front, I mean, I always feel more stable on those. They just like it's a better design if you want to be able to ride more like a go-kart almost. It just feels more planted. They're inherently more stable. However, it's more complicated steering, and so they're always more expensive. Also, the parts used are produced in so much smaller quantities that you don't get the economies of scale. Like there's literally millions and millions of forks out there, so they cost like nothing.
Right.
But to build that like linked steering like you would have in like a primitive car, basically, in a tadpole trike, it's just very
Right.
expensive. So, I mean, those exist. They're really fun. I haven't tried too many of them because there just aren't that many options, but it's a great design. But I don't think that it's like the final form, so to speak, just
Yeah.
because it's so limiting, and especially in a class of e-bike that is really mostly designed for seniors, if we're being honest.
Right.
Like it's just not the group that has the disposable income.
And
If you
also
do, they're
the
like,
speed needs
yeah,
as well. Like seniors are typically not pushing 20 miles per hour.
exactly. Yeah. Now, when you get into fat tire trikes, which really the only reason to put fat tires on a trike is if you want to go off-roading, that's where stability is really key. Because if you're doing actual off-roading, not just like a super flat manicured dirt path, but like anything with slight inclines, especially like when you're traveling sort of like parallel to the slope, I guess. Not up a hill, but sort of sideways to the hill. That's where things get like real hairy on a trike, right? Because as soon as you start leaning to the left or the right, the whole trike just wants to start turning on you. So that's where stability becomes key. And so a bike like this that has fat tires and full suspension, which you assume that they're planning on you to do at least a bit of off-roading, stability is key. And so that's where those tadpole trikes with the two front wheels would be so much better. In this case, I really see this more as almost like a luxury option for seniors, or not just seniors, anyone that just prefers a three-wheeler but
Balance
doesn't want to.
issues, whatever.
Exactly, yeah. Or even like cargo, like it's much easier to put a whole bunch of groceries in there,
Right.
especially with the front basket, which they have an option for a front basket. But yeah, it's so much easier to add all those fancy features, get the full suspension, the dual batteries, the dual motors, etc. It's so much easier to do that with this Delta trike setup with the two rear wheels. And so this is what I see as like sort of the luxury but affordable trike future, as opposed to the tadpole trikes, which are really great. It's an awesome engineering solution, more stable, but just so specialized that I can't see them catching on in huge numbers.
Yeah. So what is the weight on this? I see that it can carry 550 pounds, but do
Yeah,
we know?
I'm not sure because they didn't list it, and I couldn't weigh it because I didn't have a scale. I have
Big
my
enough.
bicycle scale. Yeah, my bicycle scale goes up to 100 pounds, and it's over 100 pounds. So it's literally off the scale.
Yeah, and I would imagine it's pushing 200 at least.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite that heavy. It might be. I guessed over
I mean, two
130,
two
but
motors, two batteries, everything
yeah,
very
yeah,
heavy.
that's a good point.
I wouldn't want to lift this into a vehicle. That's just leave it there.
Yeah. And the thing is, I mean, so I think I put in the article, like if you're going to put this in a truck, you need like a wheelchair
Ramp.
ramp or
Yeah.
like an ATV. Even an ATV ramp wouldn't be great. Those are usually like two single ramps because this is a triple track vehicle. So you basically need like three ATV ramps to get this into a truck, or a wide like, wheelchair or like rascal scooter ramp.
Yeah, and Carl and Skeptic and Michael are saying some interesting things like this could also be used in place of an ATV. You're talking about like needing to pull stuff. Um, there's
Oh
there's
yeah.
there's a lot of like opportunities here. Like Skeptic says he wants to pull 500 pounds uphill. That seems like depending on the hill, I guess, but like something that this could do. Um,
Yeah.
so lot of play here. Like this is not just getting into like three-wheel motorcycle territory, but it also is getting into ATV territory, which very interesting. Maybe there's something there, like
Absolutely. I mean, I
there's
think this
something.
would pull my 1,000 pound, like 6 by 10 foot utility trailer. I think this would literally pull it, at least empty, not loaded up.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on the space. Let's move on. There's a hidden number on every e-bike. You should find yours right away.
Yeah, so if you're not aware, there's something on almost every e-bike. It's called a frame number, and it's a unique identifier. Basically, it's almost like a VIN for a car, a vehicle identification number. It's not quite the same, but it's generally a unique identifier for every e-bike, regardless of the brand, and it's usually printed in one of a few places. Rad Power Bikes put out a helpful sort of guide on how to find yours, and so I included a few of their pictures here, but generally it's usually on the head tube, often near the bottom of the head tube. And if it's not there, it's likely printed under the bottom bracket, which is where the pedals enter into the bike frame. And occasionally it's around the seat post. So why is it important to find this number? This is basically the best proof, if your bike is ever stolen, that it's your bike. There are a lot of rad bikes out there. There are a lot of Electreks. There are a lot of Treks. There are a lot of identical e-bikes out there, right? And so if your bike is ever stolen, it's almost impossible, if the police recover, like a cache of bikes from a bike thief theft ring. It's almost impossible for you to be like, oh, that's definitely mine, unless you had something unique, like you had painted it somehow, or you had some certain accessory that wasn't removed by the thieves. And so if you have this number, write it down, take a selfie pointing to the number, like something that you can show a cop, like, this is my bike. But even more important than that, there are multiple free registries out there that people can basically register your bike, enter this number, and it goes into the registry. And then these are often used by police and other organizations to locate, or at least to confirm the owner of bikes that have been stolen and recovered. Bike Index is probably the biggest one out there. And so I recommend that anyone who owns an e-bike, find your number, go to bikeindex.org and enter it in. It's totally free. You don't have to pay for anything. And it basically makes a record that says this bike belongs to this person. And so one of the first things that police will do, at least if they're even slightly proactive, is if they make a big, bike bust, for a lot of these organized bike theft rings, is they'll just run all the numbers through Bike Index or the other bike indexes. And then if it's got a name, it'll pop up and the police can contact you and say, we found your bike. That's basically your best chance of ever getting your bike back, if you don't have some sort of GPS or AirTag tracker on it. So this is sort of a PSA. Big thanks to Rad for sharing these images and making it really easy to see how to find these things. But that's your best bet, and I highly recommend anyone who has an e-bike, especially if you park it in public and it's not something that you sort of only take out of your garage for recreational rides and put it back. I highly recommend you find your number, you write it down, and you record it into one of these indices so that you can protect it just in case it ever walks away. I've had multiple e-bikes stolen. It's very, very unfortunate, and you wish you had some way to get it back when that happens.
Now, but what about the other side of this? Like, if you're purchasing an e-bike and you want to make sure that it's really the person who's selling it, can you say, hey, like, I'm looking at purchasing your bike on, Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or whatever. Can you send me the number so I can go look it up or whatever? Is that something
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And that's something that would be really responsible to do. Any seller that's on the up and up should be like, yeah, no problem. Here's the number, have them send you a picture of it or something. And you
Yeah.
can go on to one of these indices and just make sure it's not stolen. If you are at some sort of like roadside bike sale, or, someone's got like several bikes they're selling out of their garage, and you're kind of suspicious, it seems like it's too good to be true, or like the the famous, oh yeah, I lost the charger kind of thing. You can just take a look at the number and right there on your phone, like search it in one of the indices and see if it's marked as stolen. Because that's the other thing, is if your bike is ever stolen, you can just log in and go to your bike in the index and just mark it as stolen. Just like you mark like an AirTag as lost. And then anyone who finds that bike from that point forward and checks the number will immediately see this is a stolen bike.
So can you additionally say, I have a stolen bike. If this is found, call me. Here's my number. Can you put that in the
Yeah,
bike
I
index?
think I think that you can connect contact information with it. Certainly, that's how like the police would be able to get in touch with you. I'm not sure What like the so here's the thing. I don't actually use Bike Index. I don't live in the US.
Shame.
It is international,
Yeah.
but it's most popular in the US, and that's where it's going to have the biggest impact. And so I don't personally use it, so I'm not sure how much of the information you input is public facing. Like if you put your number, is your number just out there kind of thing? But
Yeah.
you are able to attach contact information so that your bike can be connected back to you if it is found.
That's cool. That's important. And that
Yeah.
might be a good way to get your bike back because, that bike's going to be on sale probably on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, a couple towns over, a couple cities over pretty quickly. So putting your contact information in there would theoretically allow a well-informed buyer to say, "Hey, just so you know, the bike that you're connected to is on sale here for this much. Do what you're gonna do."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think people are slowly becoming more well informed buyers, but a lot of people don't know about these like the bike index or that there's even a number on their bike. So I think it's awareness is key.
Yeah, and I wonder if that number eventually will wind its way into being like a VIN for registration for um, you know, bike registries and all the stuff that we hate to talk about, but
Yeah,
but
here
do
it
talk
actually
about quite a bit.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
Tel
need to get a license plate for my bike, and when I do, I'll do a little post on like the process. But yeah, you have to use your frame number when you register for your license plate.
And one last thing about that, if you're buying like a frame, like if you're like DIYing a bike from, you're just buying parts. Does like if you buy just a frame from, theoretically from Alibaba or something, is that frame going to have a number or is it only on manufactured bikes?
So, in fact, the answer to both is not always. Even
Okay.
like fully manufactured retail e-bikes or pedal bicycles, for that matter, sometimes don't have a frame number. Generally, both will. If it's just a frame, there's slightly lower chance that it will, but usually both will come with a frame number. But someone even had a comment on that post that was interesting that one of Luna's, I think it was the Luna X2, if I'm not mistaken, that they
Oh, I have not.
use a frame. Yeah, you should check your bike. I think it doesn't have a frame number. I think that's when they were saying that they source their frames from some Chinese frame maker, and that one just doesn't stamp frame numbers onto it.
Yeah, it's carbon fiber, so maybe they just,
There you go. Yeah,
they don't stamp
yeah,
carbon.
that could be. Yeah, well, they
Um,
sometimes it'll be on a sticker or something. I mean, usually it's
right.
actually like embossed into the frame if it's aluminum or steel. But yeah, I mean,
Maybe
there should
that's
be other ways to do it.
a means of keeping the prices down or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I wonder if there's a way to kind of DIY your own frame number as well. Like just make up a number, imprint it on your bike somehow, and then put it in the registry. Could you do that?
Yeah. So there's that service. It's called Tempo that I had mentioned briefly
Hmm.
in that article. That they're sort of part way there, where they give you a couple stickers with a specific number. There's like holographic anti, what's the word? Like anti-removal stickers. And then if you do remove them, they leave this like UV residue that is more common in the automotive industry. So police apparently know to look for this on cars, and they're slowly looking for it more on bikes. But yeah, that's like a non-frame number after the fact added number that can get you some sort of tracking ability. And then Tempo comes with, it's not insurance, but they partner with an insurance company to offer $2,500 of basically sort of quasi insurance if they can't get your bike back for you. So it's sort of like what you're talking about in a way, combined with like pseudo insurance.
All right, let's move forward here. Back from the dead. Oh, this is great. Bankrupted e-bike company Sondors is now pre-selling e-bikes again. And wow,
Yeah,
that thing looks a little Surani.
yeah. I mean, so they're absolutely targeting the Sauron market with this, and this is kind of wild.
Oh
This
yeah.
is the, I guess we got to start with the bike and then we'll give a little backstory. So this is the Sondors Meta AT, which stands for all terrain. It's basically a Suron or Talarius style bike. So it's a non-street legal sort of small format electric dirt bike. So I think it's 2 kilowatt continuous, 4 kilowatt peak. So it's actually a bit lower performance than several Suron or Talaria e-bikes. It's got a 2.5 kilowatt hour battery, fairly long travel suspension, front and rear, inverted front fork. Does have a removable battery. I don't know anything about whether it's UL certified or not. The fact that they don't say makes me assume that it's not, but I can't say for sure. It looks like a decent Suron style competitor. It doesn't look much like we remember the Meta line looking like, at least from the original Metacycle, and that's probably because it borrows a lot from existing off the shelf parts. I don't know that for a fact. The Metacycle was certainly a one-off design. They started like on paper designing the Metacycle frame, and this certainly doesn't have the innovative styling or the innovative frame that the Metacycle had. And so Sondors is back as a company. Storm Sondors, the original founder and former CEO, was able to purchase it back out of receivership. So he has the rights to the company again, and this is the first launch. They are pre-selling these bikes for, I think it's $2,300, which is about half of the MSRP. And that's where things get problematic.
Well, I was going to say,
yeah.
Who in that world is going to like pre-buy a Sondors bike when they just basically took a bunch of money from their last pre-sales people? Like, I almost feel bad, like not putting like a big red "do not buy this" because whatever. I mean,
yeah. So that's the thing. We've got some due diligence to do here. So here's the backstory, right? So Meta, in this case, in the Meta AT, comes from the original Metacycle. This was Sondor's foray into motorcycles. They had always been an electric bicycle company founded in 2015. Their sort of MO was to offer an incredibly low cost but fairly decently performing and well featured bike, and then be late to deliver with specs that were somewhat lower than were promised, but they always delivered until the Metacycle, when they offered this crazy looking $5,000 electric motorcycle, said 80 miles an hour, 80-mile range, really, really cool design. And then they ended up only delivering a bit under 2,000 and left a lot of people out either deposits or full payments of $5,000. And so, depending who you ask, the story goes in a few different ways. I've been fortunate to speak to both the factory that built the Metacycles and Storm Sondors himself, who was fairly forthcoming, to his credit, about what happened. And the summary is that after receiving almost 2,000 Metacycles, Storm Sondors put in a big order for a large production run of more motorcycles. But then when finances got tight, he still had to pay for the existing order he had at the factory. And he asked the factory to just take that money he put on deposit for a future round of production and apply that as the balance payment so he could get like 500 bikes out of China. And the factory said, well, wait a second, we just spent all that money on like thousands of parts, on building a new Metacycle production line. We hired a whole bunch of workers because you were about to have us, build thousands of these. Like, we spent that money. That's what the deposit was for. So we can't shift it over. And that's where things fell apart. And so what that ultimately meant was that while they were fighting, customers were left holding the bag. And so there were many, hundreds, potentially thousands of people who were basically screwed out of thousands of dollars here with the Metacycle. That was 2 years ago, and they have not gotten any recourse. Storm says he's still trying to find a solution. That sounds nice. If he can, that would be great. I mean, it sounds like he's working on it, but it's been 2 years and nothing has happened, and there's no indication that anything will happen. So at this point, we see thousands of people who were hurt by this company before, and just like you said, Seth, I mean, you got to be real brave to come into this saying like, all right, $2,300 for a Suron sounds like a great price, but am I actually going to get a bike from this company that has previously gone out of business for not delivering bikes?
Yeah, I mean, I almost
That's
want
the
to
question.
have the bike like in hand when the money is transacted. Like, I don't trust even for a second. Like, it's a very, I mean, very like people got burned, and I think there's probably a lot of money that was kind of just pocketed um, by either the Chinese factory or Storm or somewhere in between, and it's just really shady. Like it's a really shady thing to do. So yeah, I don't know what to make of it. Obviously, for a Suron, 2,300 bucks, great price. I would not recommend anybody uh, to put down 2,300 for a Suron. Go online, find a used one if that's your budget. But just don't do that. Not for this thing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it's the sort of stain on the industry, and it came at a time that the electric motorcycle market had been booming. Like coming out of COVID, 2021 was when the Metacycle was first announced, and it was just like a huge time for e-bikes and e-motorcycles. And then this was one of the biggest black eyes on the electric motorcycle market. It happened at the end of 2023, and then it's been pretty downhill ever since. I'm not saying that other companies' woes are because of this, but it sort of began what ultimately led to a really tough time in the wider electric motorcycle market.
Yeah, Michael Sprinzella says escrow companies. That might be something to ponder if you absolutely have to have one of these bikes. Although I would just say buy a Talaria and get a sticker. It's really not super unique looking in my book. But yeah.
Yeah. And that's what the Metacycle had going, was unique looking. Like that was a
Yeah.
really cool project.
Yeah, and it
That's
was a
the
really
shame
cool
of it.
innovation, especially after, I mean, I wouldn't say especially, I would say even though it didn't meet its original promises. It's like they walked a lot of stuff back, but after walking all that stuff back, it was a pretty compelling product, especially with the homologation for roads, which was also shady. But um, this is just a company throwing a sticker on a thing and hoping that you'll finance their you know their bulk buy. This is basically a group buy
Yeah.
in my opinion. I don't know if is it anything more than that. I mean, it's Saunders. I would
Yeah, I mean,
almost
you're basically like sort of funding the initial purchase and production of these bikes. Like that's what you're doing here.
and if you were like, obviously Storm can't keep his hands out of the electric bike world. If you were Storm, would you keep the Saunders brand after what happened, or would you come in with like a new brand? I mean, obviously it's his name, so that's part of it. But
Yeah,
do you
I
think the brand
mean,
is a positive or a negative?
no, I mean at this point it's got so much, like dead weight on it, and I don't know how you revive something that has that big of a stain on the
Right.
name. Yeah. I mean, if I was Storm, I would just like you're already
Storm
living a good life.
e-bikes.
You're rich. Just go surf, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you had a great run in the e-bike industry. You did great things for a while, but this was not one of them.
All right, let's do this. No, Honda didn't just launch its first electric motorcycle, and you can't buy it.
Yeah, so this was a weird situation. I saw all over the internet from many media outlets ran with this story of Honda launches its first ever production electric motorcycle. The problem is it wasn't, and you can't buy it. This was all over the place. And so the problem with this premise was three things. First of all, this interesting looking motorcycle is not Honda's first production electric motorcycle. Honda's had multiple models. The probably most famous would be the PCX Electric, which came out in I think 2018 or potentially 2019. It wasn't huge numbers, but it was production. It was also more of a step-through frame, so what a lot of people would call a scooter, but it's in the way that squares are rectangles. Like this is a motorcycle class vehicle, and it was developed by Honda to be a Honda Motor Company product. The second issue is that this is not built by Honda. This is not a Honda motorcycle. This is built by a Chinese company called Wu Yang. Wuyang has a licensing agreement with Honda. They are a joint venture, so it was basically Honda's way to make money in the Chinese market. They invested in Wuyang. Wuyang builds vehicles and sells them with a Honda badge in China. They generally do not export these vehicles anywhere. This is not homologated for anywhere outside of China. It is just a Chinese vehicle built by a Chinese company. The third issue is that you can't buy it, at least not unless you're Chinese, because it is only sold in China. The price is pretty good. I think it's like a little over 1,000 or 1,500 bucks, something like that. But this is a Chinese market only bike built by Wuyang, not Honda. And it's not, and if it was, it wouldn't even be Honda's first electric motorcycle. So I don't know why I saw this all over the internet. Even like very reputable motorcycle outlets ran with this story and got so many of these facts wrong. And I think part of the issue is that there are so many people that, even journalists, like motorcycle journalists, like true motorcycle journalists that cover the industry, that don't understand electrics, that they're often taken in by, clickbait headlines from others, especially if it's someone who didn't really understand anything about the industry at first. They get taken in by it. Or I think there's a lot of excitement that like people want Honda to make an electric motorcycle, right? Like it's a huge company, legacy company. The Honda Cub is the best selling, not even motorcycle in the world, it's the best selling motor vehicle in the entire world. So like Honda's got huge two-wheeler chops, right? And so a lot of people are really excited for Honda to finally produce like a wide selling, refined electric motorcycle to the masses, like not even just in Asia, like even just in Japan would be great, but like not just in China, to bring something international. So between the excitement for what this could have been and so many journalists out there, and again, even respected motorcycle journalists that don't understand the electric motorcycle space, that this story just got away from itself. So this was hopefully a chance to fix the record a little bit and keep expectations reasonable, because I think that's the most important thing with honest reporting, is that it's also about managing expectations. It's not just about not spreading fake news, but it's about keeping people informed about what they can actually expect from the industry at the current time. And right now, Honda's not making $1,000 or $1,500 electric motorcycle that you can buy. I'm sorry, everyone.
Well, so I can do the devil's advocate side on this one. We obviously cover, on the car side, we cover, Volvos that are actually made by Geely in China. We cover vehicles that are made by, have a brand on them. We mentioned earlier, like there's 15 different um, American companies that are building their bikes by some factory in China. So that's not something that, would cross our kind of like threshold of not news. Um, Honda is clearly putting their name on this. Obviously, it's a joint venture, but it's only available in China for sale. Something we also cover if it's interesting. We cover stuff all over the world. And this is certainly an interesting bike. Like I can't recall seeing anything that looked too much like this one. It is, obviously, I would say underpowered. Like I'm looking at the specs. What is the 1,800 watt to 300?
Oh, that's the charging power.
The charging power, and then it's a 16 kilowatt actual power, and the battery's 4.1 kilowatt hours, and then a little bit bigger on the 3,700 yuan version. These are all specs that we would expect to see kind of commonplace in the China market. So, it's easy to see why these companies or these journalists would be a little bit excited. And you kind of mentioned that Honda's the biggest vehicle company, maybe not the biggest vehicle company, but they have a very very
the
high
best-selling
numbers.
motor vehicle, which happens to be a two-wheeler. Yeah,
right. So there's a lot of interesting possibilities there, and of all the people on Earth, I think maybe you might be one of the most open to like a Chinese vehicle somehow making its way to the U.S. In some fashion, whether it's on a ride out of China or a shipping container. uh, that goes through 16 different, you know, borders or something. So for me, this is still kind of an interesting story. Maybe if Honda has some success here, they could obviously say, oh, let's change some of our existing assembly lines in Japan over to electric. I don't know. It seems like exciting enough that I think Ride Apart, Cycle World, etc. We're like, okay, there's enough here to make it worth talking about.
Oh yeah, and I think the bike itself is worth talking about. I've got no problem with the bike. Like you said, it's really cool styling. The specs are decent. We've rarely seen what is a combination of retro in the cafe racer styling with futuristic electric motorcycle. So to take a futuristic take on a cafe racer retro bike is really cool. And if Honda ever does take this design and produce it on their lines for global export, that would be awesome. I've got nothing against the bike. For me, it was all this clickbait of Honda's built its first ever electric
Yeah.
production motorcycle and you can buy it, which like, no, there's three things wrong with that, people.
Yeah.
So that was what bothered me, seeing the story run like multiple times around the interwebs.
Yeah. And so I have to ask, are you at all tempted to get one put on a container ship? And I mean, for what, $1,800?
So I would love to, but it would be illegal to privately import into the US unless you did it as one of these like very niche, like if you brought it in as a research vehicle or as like, there are a couple small exceptions
We're
that you can
journalists,
do.
man. We're doing science here.
So so I've checked, journalist is not an exceptional or a acceptable exception, but there are a
Uh,
few that are potentially workable. But yeah, I'm already like quasi on Customs and Border Patrol's watch list for some of my imports before.
oh
Nothing like,
yeah,
nothing bad, just electric vehicles that were like potentially not totally street legal in the US. So like, I don't want to rock the container ship there.
right. Yeah. How is import with all the Trump craziness? Is that even a thing anymore? Are people still group buying and stuff?
Yeah, so I totally stopped importing anything for a couple months there
Uh-huh.
because my bills were set to almost triple.
Yeah.
Now it seems like things are starting to stabilize, but yeah, I mean, depending on the mood of the day, so to speak, in the White House, who knows what the next rules on imports are going to be.
All right. It's getting late, but we have one more story. I see a lot of people in the comments. I think we might have to do 9 a.m. podcast from now on. We're usually a little bit earlier on East Coast time, but we see your comments down there, and we'll get to them in a second.
I'm going to blow
Last,
Jared's mind when he sees it's live.
yeah. NIU stock nearly doubles in 2025 amid soaring electric moped sales.
Yeah, this is for me, this is just exciting because it was sad to see New go through such a decline of sales and stock price and everything over the last few years. New, spelled NIU, if that's confusing if you're only listening to the podcast, is the largest, I believe they're the largest sort of high-tech electric motorcycle and electric scooter company. They're not the biggest electric two-wheeler company, but they are sort of the iPhone of the e-moto world. They're based in Beijing, I think. So this is a Chinese company, but they have a lot of really interesting models. And when I'm in China, I definitely see tons of them on the road. Like I said, they're a little more, they're not even luxury, I would say. They're just, a little bit nicer. They're not the everyman's, like electric scooter. When you walk past like 100 scooters parked on the street, you might see like 7 or 8 news, and there's lots of other brands because there's probably like 100 different brands of electric scooters and motorcycles. But New has always been like the one to look at when it comes to more impressive, better design, higher specs, higher tech, that sort of thing. And the really interesting thing for us is that New is one of the few Chinese companies that consistently exports models, and not just a few, but like a huge range. We're looking in that image there. They export internationally kick scooters, Vespa style seated scooters, full on, like street bike electric motorcycles, cute little like scooters that have pedals, so they technically qualify as bicycles, and even like actual legit electric bicycles. And so over the past year, they've really had a resurgence. It's mostly based on their Chinese sales. It's not their international sales that are saving them. International has always been a very small portion of their revenue. But in just the last year, on the NASDAQ, their stock has gone up. Last time I checked, it was like 97% year to date. So almost doubled so far. And it's really rising on improved domestic sales, especially helped by a policy that we actually covered earlier this year, that the Chinese government is encouraging people to trade in their older scooters to buy newer scooters, newer electric bikes with safer batteries. And so, we hear sometimes about battery fires. In China, it's a little bit more of an issue because there are more of these, cheaper, lower oversight battery factories that produce these things. There have been laws in the past year or so that have tried to weed out a lot of these factories to make better batteries. But now the government is urging everyone to trade in older bikes, and they're providing incentives so that people can do it, and it's not a financial burden. And that's really helped New, other companies as well. But New is one of the few Chinese electric motorcycle companies that's actually listed on U.S. stock exchanges. So it's one that we actually get a really good insight into their finances as a public company. And so I hope that this is sort of a sign of things to come. Obviously, the Chinese market is very different than the US market, especially the regulatory landscape is just totally different, not to mention the fact that these are probably the primary vehicles in China, whereas I don't even think they're like tertiary in the US. Like, if you don't have a car, then you have a truck. You don't have a truck, then you've got like an SUV. Like, actually maybe SUV comes first now. But the point is, these are not on most people's radar in the US. But the fact that this major Chinese company is really improving financially means that there's going to be hope for a lot of these really cool vehicles to continue coming into the international market, especially the US and North American market. And a lot of the cool designs that we often see in China are hopefully going to keep coming to the US. At least that's my hope here. Fingers crossed that with New's financial health, that means good things for us getting these vehicles.
Yeah, that's great. I love News bikes. I think design wise, they're kind of a step ahead, and even with the scale they have, they can like really bring prices down and distribution all over the place. So kind of rooting for them. And like it's really a good sign that an electric bike company is having a lot of success. So happy to see that for sure.
Definitely.
All right, let's move over to comments real quick here. We're over an hour. I think 9 a.m. may be our new time. I think that's good stuff. Michael Sprizella says, I love my PAS, but sometimes I overdo it, then use the throttle to get home. I'd be hyper local without a throttle. Yeah, pedal assist. For me, I kind of think of it as a foot throttle. Like there's some opportunity to, I wonder if there's like, you have the, bikes without a hand throttle. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to say, all right, you have assess level 1, 2, 3, and then you just have like, when you touch the pedals, it just gives you 100% power. Like that would be an interesting situation. And sometimes on like we get e-bikes where we're kind of just going through the motions because there's so much power coming out of the motor that the pedaling is just kind of a throttle, so to speak. Or I wonder if there would be a way to switch, like instead of having like spinning pedals, if you could just have like one pedal be the accelerator, like have like a spring loaded thing, and then the other pedal being like the brake or something. I don't know. There's some room for innovation.
That would be
there,
interesting. Sure. I feel like there's some danger in there as well. We got that. There needs to be fine tuned.
Yes, especially your first time, on this bike that somehow turns into a accelerator pedal. Skeptic says, I bought a Trek 820 in 1992 for $300 and still ride it. I think that's probably a acoustic bike. I saw somebody else use a different terminology for acoustic bikes, but that's what we use here, kind of the electric guitar reference.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome though. I love seeing people that, well, A, just anyone who rides like an antique bike, but B, someone who's had the same bike. That's awesome.
yeah, totally. And it's great for the environment, obviously, too.
Yeah.
For Trek to go with a hub for their throttle e-bike makes sense. People would have to be aware of their gearing it if it was mid-drive. This way they avoid newbies frying their motors and controllers. Uh, that's a valid point. I still believe Trek should be a higher level, and they could have done this with Electra. I'm in Seth, 50-mile-per-hour speed limit. We talked about that. What's your general take on requiring a license or permit for e-bikes? It's getting hard to tell the difference between an e-bike and a moped, but only one of them requires any kind of license. We've talked about this in past episodes, but maybe, Micah, you can sum it up.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that it's very location based, right? So like the US, there just are not enough e-bikes. There's not a critical mass of them for it to make sense to require licensing, that sort of thing. I do like some of the programs that we've seen in places like California, where for like teenagers that are riding e-bikes that haven't had a chance to do driver's ed yet and haven't learned the rules of the road, that they are sort of like a driver's ed light that gives you not a driver's license, but it's some sort of little like, little card that says took this course and I learned like what a stop sign is, what right of way is, that sort of thing. So I do like that there are systems like that being developed that can teach people that haven't had a chance to learn road rules about these things. But I just don't see anywhere in the US that it makes sense to actually start licensing electric bikes. And I'm talking about electric bicycles, like legit, class 1, 2, 3 electric bicycles, not mopeds, not Surons, that sort of thing. Like I said, I need to get a license plate for my e-bike here in Tel Aviv. Here, it's a very different story. In this city, we're like 400,000 people. There are tens of thousands of e-bikes. There are many places where there are more e-bikes than cars, and they are like the dominant traffic form. So a little less than a year ago, in our city, they instituted license plates. I'm behind. I still need to get one. There's a grace period for people to like get them. And while I'm not like super thrilled about it, I at least understand the need for when you have that many people riding in one place that they need to be identifiable for enforcement purposes, which I think everyone wants to see, like bad riders taken off the road, or at least penalized for
Identifiable.
endangering people.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's based on sort of a critical mass point, and I don't think the U.S. is there yet.
Yeah. And so, if we zoom out a little bit, like we are, and I think everybody, like even car riders, are in favor of expanding the e-bike base. Like they take up much less room, they're quieter, more efficient, like better exercise, like a billion different reasons why everybody wants more electric bikes. So adding a registration point would like reduce, like some people are like, I don't want to deal with that. Like I'll just stay in my car or whatever. So we want to eliminate any of that. So if you could make the registration process so dang easy that it would take a few mouse clicks and something comes in the mail and you slap it on the back, okay, like then I guess I'm okay with that. But my biggest thing is that if it reduces people's desire to buy and use e-bikes, then don't do it, because e-bikes are great for everybody. But that's my big takeaway. So if you're going to do licensing, I'm assuming Tel Aviv probably has a pretty efficient system, or somewhat efficient.
Yeah, it's like a few clicks and $20 to get a license.
Okay.
You bolt it onto your rack and you're good to go. They even give you the little like clip thing if you don't have something to
Oh,
like
that's
mount
lovely.
it with.
Although maybe they shouldn't charge. Maybe the like getting a car off the road is like that's
Yeah.
valuable to
Well,
society.
I think the payment, it doesn't go to the city. It goes to the garage that stamps your license plate, that like physically makes it, because you have
Oh,
to
okay.
go. Yeah. So like either you can have it mailed to you or you can go to the garage. It's a little more if you mail it. But yeah, like you
Right.
go to a garage and they make your license plate. So I think that's where the payment is.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Tadpole recumbent trikes are better designed. Not sure why these e-bike manufacturers don't study the industry better. Carl, I think Micah answered your question afterwards. It's a lot cheaper. Like I've never seen
Yeah.
a cheap tadpole recumbent trike. I mean, maybe that's something. Maybe that's Electrek's next. Shake up the industry thing is like make a good
Yeah,
tadpole.
actually, if anyone could, they would be the ones to do it. Yeah.
Let's give Levi a call. We'll see what
Yeah.
we can make happen. All right, skeptic. I'd be interested in an off-road trike with enough power to pull. Oh, this was kind of like the idea of tadpole trike, or sorry, not tadpole, but off-road trikes taking the low end of the ATV segment. Small towing, that kind of stuff. That's an interesting situation. Although there used to be three-wheel ATVs, and those things like were death machines. So we don't want to see that. In New York City, I've never seen a recumbent used on the streets, only used for leisure riding in parks. I don't see many upright trikes in the streets, but I've seen a few. I think a lot of that is because of the danger of being so low, especially in New York City when there's trucks everywhere that it can't necessarily see you. You throw up a big orange flag like you're 4 years old or something, maybe. But also that there's not, recumbent bikes are just a very small percentage of the overall bike population in general.
Yep.
All right, Michael Sprinzella, seniors don't ride over 20. Do you see yourself slowing down in a decade or so? I'm about your age, not quite senior yet, but I don't plan on slowing down. First of all, hey. Second of all, no, I don't see myself slowing down, but I never saw myself doing like 98% of the things that I do as I get older. I'm 51, so AARP is sending me like all these things which I'm throwing away and burning.
And no one would guess that you're 51. Every time you
Really?
say your age, I'm like, what? You were just on like a skateboard and you're like snowboarding all the time? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I try to keep active, and I think if you keep your balance, like as long as you keep working your balance, like you're not going to age out of any activities.
That's why I lay in
But
a
like,
hammock so often.
yeah, exactly. So I would just say that I know like I'm going to be 80 at some point. And when I look around, even the most active 80-year-olds are doing things like I'll probably live in Florida. Like I have no desire to be in Florida, no offense. Zero desire to be in Florida. But like,
Like how you've accepted it as like an inevitability.
well, it just like, like for me, I'm like, why wouldn't I retire in Vermont? Like I could go snowboarding every day or Colorado or something. But like when I'm 80, like maybe my knees aren't thinking about snowboarding every morning. So, like I'm, honest about, that kind of stuff. So to bring it all back around, yes, some seniors are going to drive over 20 miles per hour. I'm sorry about your hips breaking and all the other things that happen when you ride over 20 miles per hour. But, as I've gotten older, I've kind of come to the realization that at some point I'm going to be more content riding 20. So not this year, not next year, not probably next decade, but at some point I'm going to be fine with 20 miles per hour. And you are too. All right. Michael Sprinzella's analog bikes. Oh yeah. Analog. So what are we doing? How are we calling non-electric bikes these days? Analog?
Depends how cutesy I'm trying to be.
Right. Okay.
If I want to be cute, I'll go acoustic. If I want to be taken more seriously, depending on the audience, I'll say analog or pedal.
Okay. Pedal power. Meat wagons. All right. Carl in San Diego, especially important if you live near college campus. Yeah, the stolen bikes on college campuses are crazy. And then there's always these operations that are like selling like 1,000 bikes that look like they belong on a college campus. And I know some people have like bought their bike back from their, from these places. So keep those numbers on there. All right. We have some new people from our 9:00 window here. And yes, we're watching the chat constantly during the show. So, and we've referenced a few times. Michael Spinzellis, I thought SONDORS was so cool with their first gen, but too much shady stuff in their history. Yeah, I mean, it's not just about the shady stuff, but it's like you're asking me to do the exact same thing that people 2 years ago did and lost all their money. Like, you would have to be insane to accept that, especially when you know what's happening behind the scenes. Like, they're trying to get a group buy going, and if the group buy doesn't work out, they're gonna, they're gonna just disappear again. So don't love that. It's also like, I didn't mention it at the time. It's also kind of crazy that Saunders' brand was so bad that he could buy it back out of bankruptcy. I mean, I guess it's his name. I don't know. Just
Yeah, I can't imagine there were a lot of bidders.
yeah. Yeah, it's not like Juiced, like there's some value in
Yeah,
that. And I mean, well, whatever. Skeptic, there's no way they can produce an adequately spec'd electric motorcycle for that price. I mean, I think $2,300. You could like, if you're doing group buys, if you're doing it all in China and you're slapping a Saunders sticker on there, you probably could eke out a margin there, but there's a lot of contingencies there.
yeah.
All right, let me move down here a little bit. We talked about escrow accounts to buy from shady companies. An e-bike just burnt down my friend Bry, the bike guy's house. We might have to look into that. Let's see. Bare minimum specs for an electric motorcycle, 200 miles of highway range. Yeah, I don't know
think
about
any
that.
bike has gotten to that yet.
Yeah, I don't know if Skeptic's ever going to find his motorcycle. 100 miles per hour top speed and DC fast charging. Yeah, good luck. LinkedIn user, didn't lose nearly as much as others, but was one of those who lost my initial deposit for the Metacycle. I think the only way to revive that reputation is not to take any pre-orders at all, but collect payment on delivery with a guarantee. Yeah, I think that would be the way to go.
Yeah, I doubt he would have the funding to be able to do that, but if he could, then that would really go a long way. There are some people I think would never, that they've just written off the name entirely, but that would go a long way to buying back trust from a lot of people.
All right, we're talking about 9 a.m. again. Yes, please. That way my dog can get a decent walk before the show, as opposed to missing the live stream. Got to let the dog walk happen. So let's do 9 a.m.
Also, you bring the headphones on your walk.
Yeah. I mean, you have wireless internet. I'm
we go
assuming
mobile
on your phone. Yeah. Do we have a recommendation for a direct drive front electric wheel, like a Copenhagen wheel situation? Are we thinking? Is that?
I don't think they make those anymore.
But I'm sure there's knockoffs.
Yeah, I mean the Copenhagen wheel was nice because it was everything all in one.
Battery, everything.
I think. Yeah, like the Copenhagen wheel. I think Golden Motor had like the Magic Pi. I don't know if those are still around. That was like an all-in-one thing. But if you just want a direct drive, one of my favorite styles, it was called 9 Continent, though there were many knockoffs of it, and it was just like a big, chunky, beefy direct drive hub motor. Definitely recommend torque arms if you're doing that in a front motor, because you'll just rip those dropouts right out of your fork. But that would be a nice direct drive motor.
All right. Skeptic says, I desperately want a 25 mile per hour class electric tractor to replace my 1949 Ford 8N. Was hopeful Electrek would survive, but with their demise, I'm not seeing any options. Somebody make one. Anything up? Yeah,
Electrek was sad because it looked like it was going to be great, but yeah, unfortunately I guess the funding wasn't there. It was too expensive to produce. I don't know. In that farm tractor space, I've looked a lot, and there's just not any sort of affordable farm tractor. We're talking like PTO, 3-point hitch, like big rear tires, that like a traditional farm tractor. I just haven't seen anything that's other than like the Monarch, which is $100,000 tractor. So, not for like normies. That's, you've got like a industrial farm kind of thing that you're going to buy $100,000 tractor. I've been using electric front end loaders, and those I think are really convenient. Like my parents have a 10-acre property, and it does most of the like tractor style work we want to do. The only thing is that it's not a farm tractor, so it doesn't have a power takeoff in the back. It doesn't have a 3-point hitch. So if you're, want to run like traditional farming implements off the back of your tractor, it's not going to work. I think we're still a few years away until anyone produces like a legit compact farm tractor and electric.
Yeah, I wonder if it would come from the bottom end. Maybe, you know, these like more and more capable Ryobi, you know, type of just regular lawnmower tractors. I wonder if those are going to evolve into something more useful.
Yeah, it would be nice, but I just think the power required is beyond what, like you would need like 10 Ryobi batteries just to power,
Right.
you know, something that torquey. Yeah.
All right, Jared says, I'm going to be pulling a bicycle camper to the motorized bicycle races in Apple Valley Speedway in California. Take some pictures, make a video, give us a call. Want to check that out. That sounds pretty cool. Hubs would suggest Grintech. Grintech does make a lot of bespoke stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Everybody wants more electric bikes except New York City officials. It does seem that way. They're just, it's just an education thing. Like that, you know, like somebody probably got hit by an electric bike and they're just like, we got to do something, you know, like we got to like get a press release going quick. Whatever. Less government. That would be great. In this particular case, I'm not a libertarian necessarily. Let's see what else we got here. I'm in full of freedom. Okay. Would you classify it that way? I don't know. Middlebury, Vermont is my favorite town in the U.S. Going there again this month. All right. I don't know what that was related to. If I'm around 80, I see myself on an e-trike, maybe averaging 15 miles per hour, but hitting 20. Okay. Fair. 20 miles per hour, 80 years old. Just, you know, like an unexpected turn comes up, broken hip. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Wondering how much he saved by doing that. Willing to bet his buyback was nowhere near the debt. I'm assuming he's talking about SONDORS and the buying the name back. Did he say anything about that I think you spoke directly to him? Did he talk about that at all?
Yeah. No, I didn't talk about how much, you know, he was able to buy it back for. I can almost guarantee you that it was nowhere near the amount of debt that was owed. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, you know, the time it took as well, like they were trying to get somebody to pay something. And
yeah.
I mean, it might have been like a 3-figure number, you know, like just enough to do the paperwork.
Yeah. Now, I will say it sounds like it wasn't just him. It sounds like he was able to get some partners in, get some money in to be able to do it. But yeah, I'm sure it was not anywhere near what was owed.
Yeah. All right. Last one is, by the way, love what you guys do. I've been a fan even before I joined your esteemed ranks as a journalist. Oh, I wish I knew the name. LinkedIn isn't sharing names anymore. So shoot us an email.
Thank you, Mr. User.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that's the end of the list of comments there. So thank you guys all for tuning in, especially you guys that joined us in the chat there. We will be back in another 2 weeks for another episode of the Wheelie Podcast. We'll see you next time.
9 a.m., everyone.